So, thank you everyone for joining. Like I said, today we're going to be hosting a Just webinar. This is another webinar in our series of webinars that we've been hosting. And today's session is all about building your chargeback management team, hiring, structuring, and scaling for success. My name is Giancarlo. I'm on the marketing team at Just, and I'll be sort of moderating and in the background for the majority of today's session. But I'm thrilled to welcome Ronen Ben-Ami, who is our co-founder and chief risk officer here at Justt. And Ronen will be our main speaker today. But before we jump in, I just want to get through quick housekeeping notes. Um, this session is being recorded, and we'll definitely be sharing the recording with all registrants after the webinar. So don't worry if you miss anything. We'll have the recording with all the information shared with you post-webinar. And we'll also be hosting a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the webinar. This is a really great opportunity for you to get any questions in that may come up throughout the session. We have a dedicated Q&A space where questions can be added in, and we'll try to get to as many as possible during the final segment. I will be keeping an eye on it. So that's my housekeeping, but without further ado, Ronen, I'll pass it over to you.
Great. Thank you, JC. Great to be here with all of you. Very excited for this conversation today because myself, that's how I started my career in the chargeback space, was building a chargeback team within a company. And it's a really interesting topic of the challenges, the ins and outs of how to really tackle that. And I'll be sharing a lot of my own personal experiences during the conversation and I'd love to hear your questions at the end, so really want to keep some time for questions so we can make it hear from your voices as well. Um, but the agenda today will really be why does a business need a chargeback team? I know when I've built my first chargeback team, I had to convince the company I worked at why it was so important. Sometimes it's hard to understand based on the numbers why this is needed in the first place. And where does the team sit at a company? We see it with many of our customers that work with us today at Just, as it sits in multiple teams, whether it be the fraud, the customer support team, the finance team, or others. There's pros and cons of sitting in different teams, and we'll talk about each one. Who do you hire for a team like this? What type of skill set do they need? What types of individuals do you need in order to have a successful team, and how do you onboard and train that team? And how do you build a team that's for scale and is flexible? Volumes of chargebacks fluctuate, and you need a team that can scale alongside your business when transactions grow and your business grows, chargebacks grow with it. It's the name of the game that we all know. So you need a flexible, scalable team. And what insights can you learn from your chargebacks? Do you have the time to actually do the analyst role of understanding what's happening with your chargebacks and what you can learn from your chargebacks? As well as the cross-functional collaboration between teams that is so important to make sure the different teams that are connected to chargebacks in some way are working together and are set up for success. The challenges of the manual process. You've built a manual team, I've built a manual team, and then you hit all the challenges that come along with it, and how can you tackle those challenges, and introducing technologies at a certain point that could help you with those challenges. And of course, we'll have time for key takeaways and Q&A. So let's start with just high-level points about who we are, just so everybody knows who's speaking on the call today. We are a chargeback mitigation solution at the post-transaction stage. We deal with chargebacks on behalf of enterprise companies like Best Buy, DoorDash, Affirm, and many others. We handle their friendly fraud, illegitimate chargebacks, those ones that may be an innocent mistake by the cardholder or actual criminal activity, but we do it in a different way than exists on the market today. Is what we're doing so unique is that we're not using manual teams to handle the chargebacks. We built something more scalable, but we're not just automating templates. We've built a solution based off of what we call dynamic arguments that allow us to tailor each and every response to each chargeback to a higher degree than a human can without any human error, and optimizing and improving those results over time using technology to do that. So we are an AI-based solution that improves over time for the merchants that work with us. Um, that's just a few points, and let's dive into why you need a chargeback solution, whether it be with a third party that you may be using or if you're going to build something in-house. Here is an actual one of the largest online retailers today. I'm not going to mention their name, but their total revenue on a yearly basis is 681 billion. Now, their chargeback rate is about 0.3% because we base our chargeback ratios based off of our revenue today. So 0.3% is $2 billion. So just looking at the number, the volume of $2 billion in itself can be quite painful to see how much is being lost due to chargebacks, but it's only 0.3% of their revenue. So maybe it's not the biggest focus they should be looking at, but they need to be looking at the numbers in a different way because when you lose a chargeback, you're not just losing your margin on that specific transaction, you're losing the entire amount of that transaction. So when you actually break down the numbers and you take away the funds for your COGS and your OPEX, your taxes, and other things, you're left with a net income from 681 billion with 20 billion. That's 2.9% margin. And that's what's really important is to understand your margin. And when your margin is that low, that 0.3% of your revenue can actually be 10% of your net income, which is why it's so important to look at your chargebacks based off of your net income and not your revenue because it could be confusing. I had to sit for the first company that I worked for that I built a chargeback solution. I had to sit for hours with the finance team until it actually clicked to them of, wait a minute, this is a bigger problem than we thought when you look at the numbers in that way. So looking at that 10% and $2 billion being lost, this is definitely funds worth fighting for if you can recover those funds. I love about myself. I started my career in the chargeback space back in 2016 at a company called Simplex. They were one of the first payment processors that allowed for fiat to crypto transactions to purchase crypto with credit cards or debit cards. I started on the anti-fraud side. They had a very strong anti-fraud solution to stop true fraud. And then I quickly moved over to the payment side of the business. I was employee 25 there. I always say to our employees, keep asking questions until you ask questions we didn't ask ourselves. We didn't have at Simplex a merchant screening and monitoring team, fraud and chargeback monitoring team, risk and compliance, or for the payment space. And we were only working with one acquirer. I was able to build that out for the team at Simplex. And then while I was building those teams out, uncovered the problem around chargebacks. I had enough on my plate, looked for a solution on the market that would solve my pain point, and I didn't find a solution that I felt solved my pain point the way I thought it should be solved. What I ended up doing is building a solution for Simplex that was specifically tailored for the crypto industry and purchases with the debit or credit card for crypto. And I built a manual team. I started out with a small team, and that grew out into a team of about 15 and 20 individuals when I left there. It was saving the company millions of dollars a year, but there were many challenges I had. One challenge I always like to mention is what we called the code red scenario. When volumes would increase and we didn't have enough time to hire new employees in order to handle the volumes, we would take our templates that we were working off of and we'd shorten the templates so we could get to all of the cases. So instead of taking 30 to 45 minutes per case, it would take us 10 to 15 minutes so we could submit something. Instead of getting a 0% win rate on those cases, we had a lower win rate than we should have had, but at least we were submitting something. These are some of the challenges I experienced, the volume fluctuations, the industry rule changes, and keeping up to date with those industry rule changes, which is ultimately is why we built Justt. The idea of Justt came out from my time there, realizing that something different needed to be on the market, that could actually solve this problem properly for merchants, providing them with the tailored responses that was more scalable and that could use the network effect of actually improving over time by having multiple merchants on your platform and testing and improving the solution. So, should a chargeback team sit in be a standalone team, or should it be sit in a team and be a side project of a team? When I started, it was actually a side project for my teams that were actually handling other things. I built the process my own, ran and tested it myself, and then I brought it to my team to start running as a side project. It was probably 10 or 15% of their work in the beginning. But as the volumes grew, it started taking more and more time away from the other work that they needed to do. And that's when I made the transition and I said, okay, the team needs to be solely focused on chargebacks. The volumes were large enough. So we made that transition. So usually it's stage in the growth process. You usually have a volume of chargebacks your current teams can handle while they're doing their other projects and other work. But as volumes grow, it probably makes sense at a certain point to just build out a team that's solely focused on chargebacks. And that's what I experienced within my team is growing a team solely focused. I took one of the individuals that was very strong and helped he became the manager of the team. And then we built out a few individuals that were domain experts and then started growing the team that we'll explain later on who should be on that actual team. So where can this team sit? Actually, myself building a team, I my team was moved around several times. We actually started on the fraud and risk team and moved more over to the customer support, customer success team at a certain stage. So your teams can sit in multiple locations, multiple departments at the company. But there's pros and cons of sitting in each area of the business. So if I look at the payments team, what's so strong about having your chargeback team on your payments team is the payments team knows the ecosystem so well. They know the players involved, they know the issuer, the acquirer, the PSPs, the card schemes, how those entities interact with one another, which is so key to understanding how to build a strong chargeback solution. So their domain expertise is very relevant for chargebacks, and many times we'll see the team on that on in that department because of it. The problem is that team has focuses around other areas. They're trying to optimize, do smart routing, optimize their the transactions that are getting through. They're trying to make sure everything in their end user flow is compliant, and many other focuses that sometimes you're going to have a defocus around chargebacks because of that. There's also the ability to have it on the fraud and risk team. What's great about that team, and that's the team I myself grew out of, is you have very strong investigative skills on that team, which is very important as well for chargebacks. And this team knows the world of fraud very well. Now they need to learn the world of friendly fraud very well and the ins and outs around the rules around chargebacks. So their core base is also very relevant for chargebacks. The problem is many of those teams are solely focused on the fraud level reason codes, but there's many other reason codes in the chargeback space besides just fraud. So you need to make sure that that team is bridging out, expanding out from not just the fraud level reason codes, as well as they're trying to prevent chargebacks from happening in the first place, which is a very important piece of the process. But it's not just about preventing. When those friendly fraud chargebacks come in, you need to make sure somebody is fighting those cases and uncovering and recovering those funds on your behalf. Next, the finance team. What's so great about the finance team is they're ROI focused, trying to reduce the losses that you have. And if they're handling chargebacks, they're probably very focused on keeping it a small, tight team that's efficient and handling those cases. And they're closest to the fees. Many times PSPs have hidden fees. It's important to understand, are there additional fees around chargebacks? And this team will probably know those nuances best around the additional fees around chargebacks. The problem is they may not have the domain expertise needed to understand the world of payments well enough or the world of chargebacks well enough. And these nuances and changes that happen in this industry, you need to know them in real time to make sure your solution is up to date. So they may have challenges around that. And finally, the customer support team, which my team ultimately moved to when I was in at Simplex, was a great team to be a part of because you're well positioned. You understand the customer well. You may understand why chargebacks are happening in the first place and how you can improve your customer support in order to decrease the amount of chargebacks you even receive in the first place. And you have access to all of that communication. And many times, customer support communication can be so relevant to fighting the actual chargebacks. The problem is also domain expertise is many times lacked on that team of understanding the regulations around chargebacks in order to build the strongest solutions. So you need to be aware of their limitations and really train them properly so that they understand chargebacks as well. And of course, tickets and handling customer support communication is always going to be prioritized before handling the chargeback because that will stop the chargeback from coming in the first place. So definitely pros and cons of having this team in different departments. It's important to look at each one and figure out what is right for you at your company. When you're actually hiring and building the team, there's several things to look at. I always say that you need individuals that are very detail oriented, but also disciplined to handle repetitive tasks. Now, chargebacks, the world of payments, it's not something we learn at, you can get a degree in at university or learn about in high school. But you have skills that you've learned through the educational system that can help you be successful in the chargeback space. So usually I had certain tests that I would run during the hiring process to make sure these individuals had the skill set that was needed to be successful. You also need domain experts on the team. So you do need individuals that are full-time, that are staying up to date with the industry changes, making sure they understand what's happening and improving your core solution. But it's also great to have part-time employees working with you because, as I mentioned, volumes can fluctuate. Having part-time employees working on your team can really bring an edge so you can be more flexible in the amount of hours you're providing each week and what is needed in order to handle all of your cases. I really loved working with students, university students. It's a great first job for a university student that wants to get into the business world, interacting with individuals that are already working in the business world, getting their firsthand experience, and you can really get top-notch individuals from top universities to come in and work with you as part-time work and make that a flexible team. Other considerations to think about are really the onboarding. I usually say it takes about a month to onboard an individual, usually 2 weeks of training and then 2 weeks of ramping up that team. You also have industry changes. Visa and MasterCard change their rules around chargebacks twice a year. They have nuance changes in their manuals that you need to stay up to date with, as well as they make larger changes every few years. Recently, as we all know, Visa in 2023 did CE 3.0 changes around fraud chargebacks. MasterCard did first-party trust in 2024, and many other changes that have happened previously, as well as that will be changed in the future. So you need a team, those domain experts that are staying up to date with the industry changes, making sure your solution stays relevant, and continuously training the other employees on the team so that they understand how they need to make changes in the way that they work. As well as volumes fluctuating, having the flexible staff with part-time employees can really help allow you to tackle that challenge and scale. As the team grows, you need to not only think about the additional individuals you need for the team, but there's only a certain amount of individuals one team lead or manager can actually manage in a healthy way. So as that team grows, I had to hire team leads and managers on top of the team leads. So you have to think about the entire hierarchy that you need in order to be a scalable, efficient operation to handle all of your cases. What's interesting about the volume fluctuation and the scale is there's also a lot of technologies in the market today that can help you with those points that we'll talk about later on in the presentation. I took the way I train an employee to be successful on the team and broke it down into some key high-level points that I think are so important during the training process. Once you have those individuals that have gone through the hiring process, you've chosen the top individuals, you bring them in and you need a good training process. First, I always say, understand the business that you're working for. Are you physical goods, digital goods? What's your end user flow look like? How does that experience for the customer in the specific business look like? That individual needs to understand that very well. But then they need to understand the world of payments well. If they don't come back from a background of payments, they don't come from a background of payments, they really need to understand who's an issuer, who's an acquirer, what are the card schemes, how do these different entities interact with one another and why? And really understanding those players' positions, because then when you learn the chargeback process, which is the next step, you can understand why the chargeback process looks in this way and why each entity does their specific position in the chargeback process. Why is the issuer the reviewer and not the merchant the reviewer? Why only at arbitration does the card scheme get involved in reviewing the case? What are the timelines looking like? These are very important pieces to understand. Next is how chargebacks are handled internally. So you understand the chargeback process as a whole, but now at your specific company, what are you doing in order to handle these chargebacks and what systems are you using? Many times, for example, I had all of our data in our database that you needed to know SQL in order to run a query and pull the data. So I need to make sure that everybody on my team actually knew the basics of SQL in order to run queries and run SQL or SQL queries so that we could actually pull the data for each and every chargeback. Sometimes you could build an interface on Salesforce. How do you interact with that interface? Understanding how they could pull all the data and the process in order to build the evidence, and shadowing an individual on the team. Your stronger employees, have them shadow them, make sure they understand how the process works before they start building evidence themselves. And of course, the manager as well as other teammates can QA their work until you feel that this individual is ready to go and can run on his own fully, on their own fully to be a successful employee on your team. Okay, next point is really measuring what matters. I always say in order to make a successful team, you need to know what are your KPIs for that successful team. In the world of chargebacks, you have two competing KPIs. One is the quantity, the amount of cases your team could get through, and the quality, how strong is the evidence that they're building. So it's important to measure both. If you measure only one of them, you're going to miss the whole picture. Quantity is really measuring the amount of cases that an employee or the team as a whole can get through in a specific shift. But then looking at quality, it gets a little bit more challenging because at first you can look at the team's overall win rate, you can look at individuals' overall win rate, but win rates change for specific reason codes, specific PSPs. So it's usually important to break it down beyond just an overall win rate and look at individuals how they're doing for specific reason codes. The problem there is when you start breaking it down into these subcategories, you may not have enough chargebacks to have a volume that's statistically accurate to actually show how individuals are doing, because even there's going to be cases that your team did a great job, they built the evidence right, but they're just not going to win the case. So you need a large enough volume set to work off of just the win rate. So the next piece is really doing random sampling. I usually suggest the team leads or managers of the teams to actually random sample the employees' evidence to make sure each employee is working according to how you train them, and you can either work with specific individuals on specific challenges you see in their evidence, as well as when you see trends across the team, it's great to do sessions with the entire team and so that they can improve as a team and learn from one another on the quality issues that they may be having in the evidence. Great. The next piece is really that analyst function. This is one of the reasons why I built Justt, because I had a dream to have this on my team and I never had the time to do it. It's that next piece beyond just fighting your chargebacks and recovering the funds. You want to improve that process and you want to understand your chargebacks better so you can decrease the amount of chargebacks that are happening in the first place. So if you can find the root causes based off of figuring out what your win rates are, based off of reason code, PSP, issuer. You can figure out where you can run tests and improve the solution over time. As well as it's not just handling your cases. Maybe there's cases that aren't worth handling in the first place. If it takes your team 10, 20, 30, even 45 minutes to handle the case, for those low dollar value cases, maybe it's not, it doesn't make sense to actually handle those cases. So understand your ROI, understand if it makes sense to handle those volumes, and you want to see if you can learn from your chargebacks in regards to systematic issues. Earlier this year, I was on stage at MRC in Vegas talking just about this topic with our with Best Buy, one of our merchants that works with us. All the things that we've learned together and they've learned by analyzing their chargebacks properly, whether it be a fraud ring. Maybe a lot of true fraud got through. You see an increase of your fraud chargebacks. Maybe it's not friendly fraud. Can you build different rules in your system to improve your fraud system on the back end? Maybe you can improve your refund policy to actually decrease the amount of chargebacks you'll receive in the first place because it's more understandable and easier to get a refund through you. So more people will go through the refund process instead of going and doing a chargeback. But also, if your refund policy is very clear, when a chargeback does come in, you can have very strong evidence to show why that individual doesn't fall under that specific category that they deserve a refund. And sharing insights. We're going to talk now about the collaboration between the teams. The insights that you find, sharing them between the different fraud, customer support, product teams that are needed so that all teams that touch chargebacks can improve over time. Okay, so in regards to collaboration, this is a very interesting piece. Let's talk about when I was on stage earlier. I was on stage I think this was about a year ago at the MAG conference with a customer of ours. We were talking about collaboration between that we had their fraud team on stage with us and their chargeback team, and what is needed for their collaboration to be successful. So let's take the chargeback team is interacting with all of these different departments. When a fraud team, for example, misses a fraud ring and it gets through, that's information that the chargeback team needs to be aware of so that they can handle those chargebacks properly. Maybe it's true fraud, those specific cases. And the opposite as well. If the chargeback team discovers by analyzing the chargebacks that they're handling that it looks like they're actually true fraud cases, that's information that the fraud team needs to receive back to them as an alert by the chargeback team. And similar with customer support. Customer support needs to understand the world of chargebacks to a certain degree so that they can make sure that they're working properly on their end. Let's take the example where you have individuals that can actually take advantage of the system. They could post a chargeback with their issue and request a refund around the same time. And actually, you can receive the funds twice in that way, and you can lose the funds twice as a merchant because of that. So it's something to be aware of as a merchant to actually be aware of customer support that may trigger that, wait a minute, this individual probably already went to do a chargeback with their issuer, and it's not worth actually giving them a refund because you're probably going to receive a chargeback any day now. And that's information that the customer support team needs to have. Or individuals taking advantage of the system that the customer support can either update the chargeback team about or vice versa as well. Product teams, if you have their attention, they can help make your process more efficient. So working with the product teams, understanding what your pain points are, what are you doing that's so manual in your process, or there's things in the end user flow on your payments checkout page that may be causing more chargebacks. You can the product team that's working on improving the end user flow, providing those insights back to them. And something I see with finance teams a lot, I've sat with finance teams time and time again, teaching them about chargebacks. Many times the finance teams don't know about chargebacks. So let's take a chargeback. The funds can flow back and forth in a chargeback multiple times in the life cycle of the case. When the chargeback is posted, you lose the funds as a merchant. When you represent the case, the funds come back to you as a merchant, but it doesn't mean they're going to stay with you because the life cycle is not complete and those funds can be taken out again. Chargeback team needs to make sure that the finance team knows those rules around chargebacks so that the finance team is not posting things around funds recovered that they may lose later on. So really important collaboration and learning from one another there. Great. Another team that can be very helpful in the process of chargebacks, as I mentioned, the product team and working with your developers, because there's three core data sources I always say in order to build a strong chargeback solution. You have your internal buyer data, you have your PSP data, and if you're working with multiple PSPs, each PSP has a different interface in how you pull that data. And then if you are at a stage where you're using data enrichment, there's other third-party enrichment sources you can use in order to actually strengthen your evidence. So you need to figure out how do you pull all of that data into your system in order for your team to use that data, utilize it to build the strongest evidence. So if the PSP data isn't integrated in your system, your teams will actually need to go into the interface of each and every PSP and pull the data from those PSPs. So understand where you could pull that data, and maybe the developers can help you have all that data in one interface. Third-party data as well. Many of these third-party enrichment sources have APIs that you can integrate with and have that data in your system so you have one place to pull that data. If not, you're going to need to go into their interfaces in order to, for each and every chargeback, and pull the relevant information to strengthen your evidence. So understand your data sources and understand the resources you may have internally that can help you pull the data and make the work that you're doing on your chargeback team more efficient. All right, so we talked a lot about the manual processes and how to build the most successful team and around handling your chargebacks. We mentioned some of these as we went along, but there's definitely some challenges around keeping your team manual over time. What I saw is my team was doing a great job. We were getting very high win rates. And then we found ourselves leaving chargebacks on the table. Volumes were increasing. We couldn't get to all the cases. We couldn't hire fast enough to get to all the cases. We had to either leave the small dollar value cases on the table by not disputing all chargebacks, or shrinking our evidence and leaving and decreasing the actual quality of our evidence. The time-consuming process of handling each and every chargeback is very important to understand because it may not make sense to handle each and every case. Understand your ROI, and does it make sense to handle the low dollar value cases in the first place? Using technology, it can make sense. Working manually, it may not make sense to handle all of these cases. So be aware of that. The templates, I always say the first set of templates that I ever built for the first team, they were very organized, working off of each and every CAD template for each reason code. We invested a lot in that, but keeping them up to date is a huge challenge. We found ourselves with tens of different templates. And when an industry would change, or if we found something that worked great in a certain scenario, then you had needed somebody dedicated to go in and update each and every template and to train the team about the new changes. So you have to be aware of that challenge and how do you keep your templates up to date. Visibility. I always say that each PSP has a different interface, a different way of showing what a win is, what's a loss, what's pending. And it can be confusing if you don't have all that data under one roof and organized in an easy to understand way. Many merchants don't understand what's their difference between their win rates with different PSPs, what's affecting that. They can't even get to the point of analyzing because they don't have the full visibility in one place, and limited time for chargeback analysis. It's something that I always said I dreamed about doing when I built my first chargeback team, but I never had the time to actually research the chargebacks, understand what my weak spots were, and how do I improve the solution as well as decrease chargebacks from happening in the first place. So as I mentioned, you usually start out with a manual team. Sometimes it's really a team within a team. It's a team that's a side project for them. As the volumes grow, you'll usually build it out as a full-scale team that's just handling chargebacks because the volumes get so high. It's important, as we mentioned, to work with your product and R&D team to see if there's parts of it that they can automate for you to make it more efficient, some form of hybrid model when volumes start increasing. And then you need to start thinking about automation at full scale. And what we do here at Justt is what we call smart automation. You want a scalable solution, but you don't want to decrease the quality of your solution. When you hit that point of you're ready for more automation, it's really the time to think, do you want to build it in-house, or is it something you want to work with solutions that exist on the market that can help you with that process? So, with all that said, I'm take a breather for a second, and now I'm going to jump into smart automation and what smart automation in the chargeback space is all about, and what we're doing at Justt, what we're all about, why we went this route with smart automation. So, as I mentioned, automating templates will give you a scalable solution, but what we saw is it decreases your win rate because you're not getting to the level that a human can tailor the response for each and every case. So we took a different route here at Justt. We built the system off of dynamic arguments. And we have the three data sources I mentioned earlier. You have your PSP data, you have the merchant buyer data, and you have your third-party enrichment sources that we're integrated with. From the data that we pull into our system decides which dynamic arguments to use, how to design those dynamic arguments for the specific case, and builds that case based off of the issuer, the card scheme, the reason code, the PSP, the data available, so you get the most tailored response and the highest chance of winning that case. We run QA automatically on that, as well as manual QA sampling in the background, and everything is sent off and within seconds for the volumes of cases that are coming in. What this allows is a solution that is more tailored than a human can without any human error and is scalable for the volumes and the fluctuations of volumes that happen in the space. But it's not about just handling your cases, as I mentioned, it's about improving the solution over time. And there's two key pieces about building a solution that can improve over time in an efficient way. You need to have domain experts that understand the industry and are staying up to date with industry changes and are running tests on the process. But it's not only about having domain experts, it's how do you scale the domain experts' knowledge. And that's where you can build a solution that we've built off of about dynamic arguments, where they don't need to go in and manually change templates like I used to do when I built my first solution. They build a core argument or a core change into the brain of Justt, and then all of the merchants that fall under that scenario receive those improvements in their solution, as well as running A/B tests and in learning from the A/B tests from the weak spots that we find. And we're not running an A/B test on two different templates for a specific merchant. We're running A/B tests on data points and arguments in specific scenarios, and whatever we find in that scenario is then inputted into the core of Justt, and all the merchants that fall under that scenario receive those benefits. So the solution is improving over time, and all of the merchants that sit on the platform receive that network effect of the improvements we have. All merchants are affected by those improvements. As well as I mentioned, it's not just about fighting and improving your solution, but it's also about understanding, having the full picture of what's happening with your chargebacks across all of your different PSPs under one roof. You can see all of your chargebacks in a simplified way, see what's won, what's lost, what's pending, and when you're going to receive those final results. And you can either integrate with our API and be fully hands-free from the process, or you can actually upload a CSV file on a weekly basis at bulk, so we could handle all get that additional data from you as a merchant. If there is additional data we need from you, some merchants don't even need to provide additional data, and we can already provide them with a higher win rate than they had before. And then what we saw is we're constantly looking for weak spots to improve the solution, but a lot of the insights that we were using are very important for merchants to receive as well. So in our platform, you can actually see what's affecting your win rate. Maybe your win rate decreased for a specific month because you had more fraud chargebacks that came in that are true fraud. Those are insights that you're going to want to receive in order to see if there's things that you should change in your backend, as well as our team and our domain experts are monitoring your traffic and work with your teams as a partnership to see what other insights you need to receive that are beyond just what's on our platform. So you can learn from the process. What I always say is we we want to help you decrease legitimate chargebacks. And if there's insights we can find that help you decrease legitimate chargebacks, it'll actually help us when the illegitimate chargebacks come in, and we'll have stronger evidence because your end user flow may be more compliant, your customer support team is doing a better job, your carriers are working better, your anti-fraud solution is better. So when we're left with those illegitimate chargebacks, those friendly fraud first-party misuse cases, we have stronger evidence to handle those cases. Great. So I'm going to leave you with a few key takeaways and then open it up for questions. I think we're okay on time, but I'll try to run through this quickly. We mentioned all these points, but at high level. First, you want to hire for flexibility. You want to be able to have a team that could handle the volumes, whether you're using technology to do it, or the team that can be flexible and handle the fluctuations, the volumes of cases. You need to train that team on an ongoing basis because we talked about the rules change over time, and there's new things that you learn about your solution, and make sure you have ongoing training and a team, individuals on the team that are staying up to date with the industry changes. Measure what matters. You need to look at both the quantity and the quality side of your team to make sure you're seeing the whole picture of the success of your team. Reporting drives improvements. As I mentioned, that was my dream, to be able to look at the insights of our chargebacks and improve the solution. And if you have the time to do it, great. If you don't, think about if you need to work with a third party that can help you do that. Cross-functional alignment is so critical, whether it be with a chargeback team with the fraud team, the chargeback team with the customer support team, finance, and the others that we talked about, and really making all of those teams successful at the company. Manual processes can work in the short term. They're not scalable in the long term. And it's really important to understand when you need to make that switch and when you need more effective ways to handle the chargebacks. Building a scalable operation is great, but when the volumes start fluctuating, you're going to need something more technology, whether it be a technology to improve your current solution or to take over the process. And what we believe here at Justt is the future is smart automation for the volumes of cases that are coming in and the increased volumes, whether your business volume is growing or it's Visa and MasterCard that mentioned that friendly fraud first-party misuse is just growing in the industry, and we need to be ready with a scalable solution to handle these cases in a smart way. Okay, I'm going to stop there, pass it over back to JC, and see if there's any questions from the audience.
Awesome. Thanks, Ronen. Yeah, lots of really juicy insights and good information there. Thank you for sharing all of that, including your experiences. I think it's really fascinating story prior to founding Justt, and it plays really well to this topic. Hopefully everyone in the audience found it valuable. And we did actually receive some QAs that came in throughout the session. So thank you to those of you who have submitted questions so far, and keep them coming. We do have some time. We're going to try to get through all of them, but if you have any questions at the moment, definitely please send them in the Q&A section. And without further ado, Ronen, let's go through them. So our first question here, it's two questions. The first one being, is it more of an advantage or a disadvantage if chargebacks and fraud handling are built into a single team with weekly context switching between payments, disputes, and fraud/abuse tasks? How does this setup impact long term?
Yeah, that's a great question. Especially, I love that they mentioned the context switch because that's what I saw on my team is when it was a side project and it was only 10% of their time a week. It was the context switch was doable. Every time there's context switch, of course, it makes the team a little bit less efficient. But because they had a background in risk and compliance and merchant screening and monitoring, I felt like the team had a lot of background in domain expertise that helped them learn the world of chargebacks well. And when the volumes were that low, the context switch actually helped with the process. Once it started going to the 20 or 30% of their time, I realized that it was more challenging and context switches were more problematic. So you have to really understand what is that limit of the benefit of having a team that is doing other things that are relevant to chargebacks and actually can give you a leg up of having them handle your chargebacks as well to wait a minute, it's taking too much of their time and there's too many context switch happening here throughout even in one day that's making the team less efficient.
Awesome. Cool. And then the second part of this question is, should fraud and chargebacks be treated as two separate areas of expertise versus mixing them together?
Yeah, that's a great point because I started my career on the anti-fraud side and then I moved over to the chargeback side and the payment side, and I think they're very different um, um, expertise, and they should be treated differently. I think there's similarities between the two because of the fact that I had a lot of experience around fraud and understanding how do you investigate fraud. I was really able to quickly ramp up in the world of chargebacks, but I had to learn a lot of new areas of the industry in order to be successful at chargebacks. For the world of fraud, you're really trying to build rules and look at the data to stop the true fraudster from getting through in the first place. And you need to investigate, you need to look at the data, know how to work with that data. When you're dealing with chargebacks, you're dealing with a lot of documentation, a lot of compliance. So you need to be able to investigate the scenario, but you need to understand the rules of the card schemes, the changing rules of the card schemes. You need to be able to if you, even if you're working off of templates, sometimes the individuals will still need to write out things themselves. I always say that a good chargeback solution has two pieces. It's understanding the rules of the card schemes and how they relate to that specific case and you as a merchant, so how you can bring the right data to the table, but understand who's reviewing your evidence. That issuer has about 3 minutes to review a document that's 20 pages long. How do you write that document so that you're actually making the issuer's life easier so you have a higher chance that they'll rule in your favor? So building simple sentences and simple presentation of the information. Many times that issuer doesn't even understand your business, your industry, so that they could quickly understand what do you do as a merchant? Why did you provide everything properly as a merchant and decide, and so that they could decide in your favor? It's a very different set of skills than the fraud team. But I have seen people that can interchange, others that are very good at one but not the other.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, great question. The next one is there a point where automation should fully replace manual work, or should there be a human in the loop?
Great question. So I believe in the technology at this point where we are at Just. Technology can run the solution more efficiently and at a higher quality than an individual can. However, there is still a place for a human to be in the loop, and the human is in the loop, whether it be QA on the onboarding of building the solution or improving the solution over time. And that's really the key piece is having technology built for domain experts, so domain experts can actually analyze the scenarios where your weak spots are and how they can improve the solution. But the actual building of the evidence should be fully automated. If you're using smart automation, the system can build evidence better than a human can today. The human can help improve what the system is doing.
For sure, yeah. Having a human in the loop at some stages is always valuable. It's cool to see. One more question. What's a surprising insight you or your team uncovered while digging into chargeback data?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll actually share an interesting story. The first time I uncovered this, and it happens in the industry, it's important for all of us to be aware of. We were dealing with a very high value chargeback. It was worth about $10,000, and we built all the evidence with all the documentation, and the case went past the pre-arbitration, was going to the arbitration stage, and we're deciding if we should continue fighting. And we actually got from our acquirer that we're working with the PSP documentation, the issuer documentation, their evidence that they submitted, and we saw that the actual card holder had changed the communication and changed pieces and doctored the documentation so that it can be ruled in their favor. And this is a challenge because in the end, the world of chargebacks is built off of documentation. And of course, as a legitimate company, it's Just, and you guys as merchants, we want to work properly and provide legitimate information and not doctor anything. But we do have to remember on the other side, there is a card holder that sometimes they can try to doctor the documentation. And we saw that they actually changed the documentation so it can be ruled in their favor. Huge challenge to be aware of and to tackle. Trying to write out why this is incorrect and show your documentation why your documentation is the correct documentation.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You mentioned hiring students and part-time workers. How do you ensure that quality doesn't drop?
Yeah, it's a good point because in the end, when you bring in part-time employees, you would assume that they're not as dedicated to the company as your full-time employees. But that's why it's so important to have a strong hiring process. I always say it's important to have some form of testing in the process to make sure that you're bringing top quality individuals. Don't just have an interview process, but have it whether it be a home test or have them come into the office, see how strong they could be in the process, as well as it's important to have full-time employees that are managing that team, measuring them based off of the KPIs of the team, and and improving the team, bringing insights back to the team as challenges come up.
Definitely. Very valuable. We have two more questions at the moment. What's your advice for building better collaboration between the chargeback team and the fraud or customer support teams?
Yeah, it's a good one because I think when I think we were on stage with Best Buy where their teams explained the collaboration between them and how it's so successful. And I think, of course, there's two things. You want to build a strong process between the teams so that the door is open and they know how to efficiently collaborate between one another. But one of the things I loved that Best Buy mentioned on stage is the biggest thing is culture. You have to first have a really strong culture at the company that allows for one individual in one department to be able to go over to the other individual and ask questions and understand that there are no stupid questions. Because if anybody sees something, your employees are the boots on the ground. If they see something and they can bring it to your attention, I've seen it time and time again. they can bring valuable information that could help improve your processes.
Definitely. We had another question come in, which is a great question for you, Ronen. What separates Justt from all the other chargeback management solutions in the market, and how does Justt support continuous learning and growth internally? Which is very interesting.
Yeah, great question. Because here at Just, we're really excited of what we're doing in the market. We've been able to prove time and time again, whether we go into an A/B test with an internal team or other solutions on the market, we've been able to show that we bring better results to the market than exist today because our solution is so different, and the product we've built has was thought about in a different way than what exists today. We built a solution that isn't just scalable, but it is also building stronger evidence than a human can. And even when we hit that higher win rate, we don't stop there. The goal is to continually improve the win rate over time, running these A/B tests and running these A/B tests at scale. When you are a customer of Just, you are part of the network, and you receive the continual tests that we're doing. You receive the benefits of those tests. So that process allows us to bring a higher win rate. The technology, we are on the forefront of technology that allows us to bring the best solution to the market. It's the methodology and technology together that brings something so different, and our platform. Our interface is very easy to use, provides very strong insights back to our merchants, and is constantly improving from feedback that our merchants provide to us of what else they want to see on the platform.
For sure. Awesome summary, Ronen. Well done. Well, thank you, everyone. I think that's all kind of the time we have for um, very close to the top of the hour. So thank you everyone for submitting your questions. Thank you, Ronen, for leading such an informative session about building your chargeback team. If there's any other questions or anybody wants to follow up post webinar, please do reach out to the email that's been on the screen, info@justt.ai, or you could reach out through our website. We will definitely be following up with a recording, like I said, of this webinar. And so keep your eyes out for that. Should be coming to your inbox soon. And yeah, thank you everyone for being here. We look forward to seeing you in the next Justt webinar. Thanks, Ronen. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.